Do, 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 do.
Oh, perfect.
Miss Brittney,
Hello.
how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Okay,
Uh,
this was easy.
yeah, not too bad, huh?
Yeah, no, not bad at all.
No, it's pretty easy. I remember the first time I tried, you can't talk as well as being on Instagram, and I couldn't kind of figure that out. So it
Yeah.
took me a while the first time, but it's so easy. Good to see you.
Yes, you too.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. We have some people jumping on with us, so
Yeah.
let's give it a minute or
Okay.
two, and we'll let them jump on. Hey, can you see like a comment box
At the bottom,
at
yes.
the bottom?
Mm-hmm.
So if people have questions, it will come in there.
Okay.
Yeah. So if there's more than one question, it kind of moves up a little bit. So you and I can kind of keep track of that, and then
Okay.
yeah, sometimes people have questions. Other times it's quiet. So
Do you want me to just answer them if I see them or like just
yeah,
wait
either one
or?
of us. Like if there's a question, like we just
Okay.
kind of get to them as they come up. So yeah, we'll see. And sometimes just people are quiet and just
Hmm.
you and I, and other times people have like a lot of questions. So
Okay, no problem.
how was were you at training today? How's your training schedule?
Um, it's not too bad. I'm missing it today actually for this, so
Oh, thank you.
yeah, no
Thank you
problem. It's
so
fine.
much. When's
Yeah.
is your schedule now all over the place with training, or is it pretty consistent?
No, pretty consistent. Yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
it's not
Same
bad.
same time or just based on
Um,
elements?
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday at 5 p.m. and then Saturdays at 10,
Okay.
just to like be convenient for the kids that are in school and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Hey, what's the what club are you coaching and training at the same place?
Yes. So
Okay.
Phoenix Athletics
Okay.
Association.
That's
Hmm.
right. Let me just break that down. Just
Yeah,
so
no problem.
awesome. Yeah, you mentioned that to me before, but I totally forgot
Hmm.
in regards to that. Why don't we get started? So
Okay.
welcome everyone. So this is our Headset Sports Thursday Instagram Live. Today, really nice to have Brittney Gibbs with us today. And I have some questions for Brittney. We're gonna go through some aspects. We're gonna focus a little bit more on the mental skill part. And it's great having Brittney on because she is currently still performing. So training, competing,
Yeah.
coaching, and also has a sports psych side as well in regards to
Yeah.
education and practice. So we have just from many different sort of levels and layers today, just being able to learn from you along the way. If there are any questions for people who are joining us, if you have any questions, comment box, you can put your questions in there. Please let us know. We'll stop. Whenever there is
Hmm.
a comment or question, we'll stop. We'll get to it. If you want to wait to the very end, you can as well, but let's try to make this as interactive as possible, and we'll touch on some parts that we think are important. But if there are parts that you think are important that you want to ask Brittney or I, please feel free. So Brittney, welcome. Thanks again. And I kind of want to start where before we even officially started. So you are back to training
Yes.
now. You
Back to
are back
training.
to competing as
Yes.
well. You are a jumper, right? So we have
Yeah.
triple jump and
And
long
long
jump.
jump. Hmm.
And can you tell us just even maybe even the last like few months in regards to just life as a track athlete and jumper in these current times?
Yeah, so for me, indoor season ended February and things are going well. We had all the outdoor meets planned out and like training was lining up well, performances, everything was honestly going great. And then March, obviously, COVID hit. So there's a lot of uncertainty because we didn't necessarily know what was going to happen. And I remember we were at York training just to practice, and we got an email from Athletics Canada basically saying how, as of now, outdoor season's canceled because we don't necessarily know the severity of COVID, what all is going to happen. So just for safety precautions, we're going to hold off.
Right. And that's in March. That's
That
in
was in
March.
March, yeah.
Get the email. And for those that don't know Brittney, so Brittney is located in Toronto, right? The Toronto, called
Yeah.
Greater Toronto area. Before your athlete at Southern Illinois,
Yes.
before moving back. So she's currently based in Toronto or the Greater Toronto area, training, competing. But you were in Southern Illinois for 4+ years, correct?
5 years, yes. I was there for 5 years.
Right. So kind of have that. So if there are any people from the U.S. or abroad, that kind of just giving them some context in regards to where you're at. So Athletics Canada in March send an email out and they say, hold off.
Yes.
And when did you get back into things? So you're off for a few months, correct?
Yes. So we basically weren't allowed to practice. You know, it was just protocol. You weren't allowed to be in a certain amount of groups of people. So I believe like mid-July, when you were able to be with like 50 people max outside, Athletics Canada then came back and said we can start training with our groups as long as everyone has signed the waiver. And it was still capped off to how many people, but we were able to start training again. So as a team, we collectively decided let's start back up. So yeah, mid-July, we started training. Things obviously were slow because you couldn't really do anything unless you decide to do stuff on your own. And yeah, so since then we've been training. We just started base training 2 weeks ago in preparation for hopefully an indoor season.
And that's still up in the air though, correct?
Yes.
The indoor season?
Yeah.
Okay.
Luckily enough though, when August came, we were able to compete in some meets. So some clubs had like a end of outdoor season of what would have been. So that was great. So at least people were able to engage in some type of event just to see where they're at.
Sure.
Yeah, so that was really good.
Can I ask, like, so a lot of my questions for you today and kind of like a concept for today, it's about I'm going to talk about transitions a lot today. And I think that's just so important for athletes, coaches. It's transitions are going to happen. It's just, how do we take those on?
Yeah.
Right. So a question for you and kind of how do you handle it, and maybe a little bit more so mentally, how did you handle the transition from getting ready for one season? Like you said, like, I'm getting ready for the outdoor season in March, and then it stops.
Yeah.
And then how do you go about transitioning, right, in getting ready to come back again?
It was definitely hard because my motivation was gone, basically, you know, with the uncertainty of, okay, are we even going to have a meet? Like, what is there to do? Obviously, me personally, like, I need to know what I'm training for, at least, because that would be like motivation. Like, okay, so I have this meet coming up, so I'm prepping for this given meet.
Right.
So with that transition mentally, it's kind of just, you never know what all can happen. So even though this is a little setback, of course, you still want to be prepared and ready just in case something does pop up. So like the meets that came in August, we weren't really expecting them to come, but because we started training mentally, I was like, anything can happen. I had that mindset. I was able to compete in those meets, you know, pretty well with my mindset and everything that happened, because I was able to practice that beforehand.
Yeah, nicely said. And it sounds like that, and just kind of taking some of your words and bringing them back, because they're so important, is that you are still preparing, even though it's uncertain.
Yes, and I feel like that's important, that a lot of people skip, because you just never know. So it's still better to be safe than sorry.
But difficult, like you're saying, like it's super challenging. You're in it, your other teammates are in it, and it's uncertain, but you're still going about it in preparation like you're going to compete.
Yes, yeah.
And then you get, I guess, the A-OK from the athletic boards, and then you start to kind of get ready again, right? Because you had a couple competitions you mentioned, correct?
Yes, yeah. So I was able to compete in 2 meets this season, which was good. But yeah, just getting back into that competition mode and everything that I would do, pre-competition. And for me, imagery is very key. So, just imagining myself competing and doing everything that I want to do to how it should be done.
Nice.
So getting back into that rhythm, obviously the
Yeah.
competition feeling, the adrenaline that you have, components, yeah, so
No.
it was good.
And just even to kind of touch on some of the words that you're using and just some examples. So imagery, so important for you. Also, a lot of athletes say, you know what, this is what I do, right? It's important for me.
Hmm.
I'm not always sure athletes know exactly how to do it,
Hmm.
right? And it's a skill, right? So
Yeah.
you have to work on that skill. I don't think there is a person that goes, I got it down, right? So you have to work at it. So can you kind of help us understand kind of what you do for imagery? How does it progress, possibly? Could you
Okay.
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So for me personally, well, imagery, basically you're using all five senses. Not necessarily, you don't have to use all five, but it's preferred. Use all five senses to just either recreate or create an image in the head. For me, I use it like before competition. So I'm imagining myself on the runway. I'm trying to imagine what everything's going to feel like. If there's wind, then I'm feeling for that. The noises that I'm hearing, just trying to make it as close to possible, or like, imagining it as close as it would be when I'm actually competing. So me on the runway, um, obviously I'm imagining my running steps, getting closer to the board, everything that I need to do, staying tall, aggressive, quick, fast, all of those components and aspects. I know some people use imagery in practice for different things. And it's also recommended, like when you're using imagery, to do it like in the actual time that it would take to complete like the given task.
Right, right. Well
Yeah, so
said.
with jumps, I mean, you have like a minute on the runway. So that's up to you if you want to use a full minute, but roughly, 10 seconds, I'm just like mentally preparing and then I go. So for me, I'm imaging for about like 15, 20 seconds because that's how long it actually takes me to complete everything.
Very nice. And for people, if they just kind of came into it, so Brittney's a jumper, right? Triple
Hmm.
jump, long jump, and you have this opportunity to get ready, right? It sounds like it's about a minute,
Yes, yeah.
right, in regards to that. But you, in regards to just preparation, you prepare for that for about a minute. So it's
Hmm.
like you're imagining your jump from multiple senses for about a minute, but then you're going through what it feels like, right?
Yeah.
What it sounds like, if there are
Hmm.
sounds. If you're outdoor, you mentioned it might be wind. If you're indoor, you have this external environment around you. So you're taking all those parts to you as a competitor and you're practicing mentally even before you
Yes.
do it.
Hmm.
What challenges do you have in regard? Are there any challenges in regard? Because you've competed all over the place,
Yeah.
right? In regards to, you don't just perform in one arena, you perform in so many different places.
I think now personally, it's not as challenging, but obviously when I was using it at school, it's something that I was just introduced to. So the change of environment, yes, like meets from meets, obviously you're not always in the same area and things like that. So that was something that was hard for me to adjust to. So now it's kind of just, I have that mindset where nothing is ever certain. I'm always going to go traveling to different places. So I just have to keep the mental and like focus on what I need to do because what I'm doing is not changing. It's just the
Mm.
location. So
Mm.
if I'm able to understand that, like what I have to do and what I'm visioning and seeing, it's always going to be the same. I
Right.
just have
Right.
to perform to that.
Oh, that's so well said, right? So, things will change in regard to different places where you perform, but really you within environments, it shouldn't really change
Yeah. Hmm.
dramatically, right? There may be some changes here and there, but it sounds like the routine is similar.
Yeah.
If you're preparing in Toronto, if you're preparing in Illinois, if you are somewhere overseas, it's very similar.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hey, for an overall, even to kind of backtrack a little bit, what would be like for you getting ready for competitions? How long does it take you to get ready? Let's just say
Uh,
for
like
overall, like even backtrack. Let's even, you're saying
like
you
waking
got,
up, like all of that.
let's even go like from the doors open, right? Or if it's an indoor meet, or you come to the track, like when do you like to get to the track? When do you like to get to the
Okay.
competition venue?
Okay, so let's just say I'm competing indoor. Um, when I know the set time that I'm competing at, so let's just say I'm competing at 12.
Okay.
Usually they'll open the runway about half an hour prior, so that's 11:30. That's for us to do our run throughs, short approach jumps, everything that I need to do. So that means I need to be ready and prepared by 11:30.
Okay. Okay.
So I typically usually takes me about 40 minutes to do a warm up, only because I like taking my time, because I like to feel the motion and like truly understand what my body is going through, see how it feels. So then I can have a better idea of how the day's going to go for me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so if I had to be ready by 11:30, then I would probably start around like 10:40-ish. And I like getting to the track before so I can listen to my music, get in my zone, and
Sure.
not have to worry about anything. So I would roughly probably get to the track like 9:30, 10. So
Okay.
then I still have time to just, especially if it's a new track that I haven't gone to, the first thing I do is go look at the pits, see what it's looking like, which way am I jumping, where am I facing, basically just check my environment to help me stay calm. And then, that's when my imagery comes into place. Before I even start warming up, I kind of like, all right, so this is what's going on today. Kind of just having that self-talk. Self-talk really helps me. Another mental
Sure.
skill that I use a lot. Because then I'm able to like actually feel and sense my emotions that way when I'm self-talking to myself. Um, and yeah, that's basically
Yeah.
my routine.
But
Yeah.
but even that, because you live it, right? So it's awesome that you're able to kind of give it to us. But like,
Yeah.
even if I am hearing you, and if I was to watch you, like you have a certain amount of time, it
Mm-hmm.
feels like, for your pre-comp.
Yes. Yeah.
You give yourself a little bit of a range, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty, you got a time frame, but sometimes you might need a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, but it's not significant. It's not
Yeah.
hours more or hours less. It goes really by, it's a few minutes,
Mm-hmm.
give or take, it sounds like.
And with jumps, it's always uncertain too. So I never want to be too early, because most times I'm usually like in a later flight. So sometimes those flights, take longer than
Good time.
planned. So you have to be mindful and prepare for that as well. So like if there's a flight before me and I start my warm up and I realize that I'm almost done my warm up and they probably like are on their second jump or something, then I'll start to ease back a little bit, take a little less time, or see if there's something else that I can do. Instead of rushing through my warm up or anything like that.
Yeah, and well, like, so once again, you have this amount of time. You've kind of figured that along the way, and I think it's important for athletes just to kind of figure out how much time. But
Mm-hmm.
then, as you're getting ready, it feels like there is a time to, like, all right, now I'm getting ready to jump,
Yes.
right? Rather than I just have this general getting ready. Now it's like I'm getting ready to jump. When does that start for you?
Usually like 15 minutes before.
Okay.
Because obviously you're doing, so like, yes, as I said, you have like at least half an hour to prepare before the competition starts. So like those first 15 minutes, putting on my spikes, I'm doing my approaches, but it still doesn't hit me until like those 15 minutes where it's like, okay, time's winding down.
Okay.
They call out, runway will close in 15 minutes. So then that's when things are starting to get real.
Okay, that's the time. Well,
Yeah.
15 minutes, like, and that's what people have to understand. Like, it is so by the minute, right? So you're using
Mm-hmm.
your time effectively. So, like, about 15 minutes out is
Yeah.
when you start to get ready to jump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Nice. Can you give us even this last part? Because it's so important, because we're going from 15 minutes. You gave us the 1 minute. You,
Yeah.
you start to go that one. What do you do in between 15 to 1?
So that strictly depends on when I'm jumping in the order.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Gotcha.
Usually I'm kind of one of the last jumpers to go. So then I would utilize the whole 15 minutes, make sure I get that last jump in, because then I have a whole, usually like 10 to 12 people that are jumping in before me. So I have all of that time to rest and prepare. But let's just say I'm jumping first, then usually I would finish with like 5 minutes to spare so I can actually, rehydrate and then
Okay.
just work on that mental aspect again before it's time for me to go.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well said. Well said. Hey, can I ask you, so you have this routine for jumping, right?
Mm-hmm.
For each jump. What do you do in between, right? Because you have multiple jumps.
Yeah.
So we
So,
can imagine Brittney getting ready, and she goes for her jump.
mhm.
She's successful, right? She gets a valid jump. Then what does Brittney as an athlete do in between one jump to the other?
So this is where it gets a little bit more complicated because obviously with jumps, um, you're seeing the other jumps, like the jumpers go. So you're hearing what they're jumping, you're watching them perform. I mean, it's up to you to obviously block that out, but it's hard because the announcers are calling it out. You're seeing it on the screen before you go.
Right.
So for me in the past, that was something that was like negative for me because I was just so focused on what other people were jumping that it affected how I was jumping because I was like, okay, they jumped this. I know I could jump that, but I was so focused on jumping that obviously it never happened. So now in between my jumps, I make sure that I'm staying warm, first of all.
Okay.
Depending on the amount of people, sometimes I'll do like just some short approaches, anything like that, to get my legs moving and just get the feel of the runway again, things like that. But most times I just try to stay off to the side and not really worry about everything that's going on because those are things I can't really control, and just focus on myself and what I need to perform for the next jump.
Yeah. Can I ask you this? Do you bring any adjustments into the jump by jump? Would someone come to you, or would you do some adjustment work in between time?
Yes. So after each jump, most adjustments is really with my approach. So sometimes,
Okay.
with jumpers, you can foul. So then you need to move your approach back. Or if I'm back, I need to move my approach up, things like that. So my coach will let me know, like, hey, you were this far behind the board. I don't think you need to move your run. You just need to push more in the back. Or you were a foul, so move back this much because that's how much you fouled by. Usually it's mostly just the approach because that's how it starts, If you're
Okay.
excelling and you're pushing well in your approach, everything else is going to translate in the jumps. So for
Okay.
me, that's always the main focus. Because if I run well, then the jump ideally will be well as well.
Yeah. So it sounds like for you, it really is just focusing on just a few things.
Hmm.
You appreciate coach giving you some feedback.
Yes,
Yeah,
I look for
that's pretty.
that often. Yeah.
That's key. That's key
Hmm.
for a lot of sports, where if you can go to coach for some guidance between, like it could be jumpers, it could be gymnasts, it could be swimmers,
Yeah.
right? That feedback, very brief, specific feedback that you can incorporate, it sounds like for your sport as well is
Hmm.
pretty important.
Yeah. And even if it was a great jump, things were fine. Like just my coach telling me, keep it up. That was a great jump. Like just continue to bring it. Just like small reassurances, at least for me personally, like help me because then I know where I'm at in my path and obviously what I have to fix if there's anything.
Yeah. Hey, was it now going and kind of circling back to COVID and getting back into things? Did it take some time to get back to this routine? Because you've been working on this routine for a long time,
Yeah.
right? So it's not the first, like you've done it so often. Was it hard coming back from being off on this routine?
It was, I'm not gonna lie to you. It definitely was hard. That first meet, it was kind of just getting back into okay, what do like, I know what I typically do, but it's just like, okay, I actually have to do it now. So like,
Yeah.
what all did I really do in the past that benefited me and helped me going to bed, the night prior at a decent time, especially now when we were in quarantine, my sleep schedule was off, things were off. Um, and even though I had to get back into that routine, it was kind of just trusting myself and not being so hard on myself either. Like obviously we had months off, so things probably aren't going to go as I want them to, and that's okay because of everything that happened. So for me, it was just like go with the flow, do everything that you typically do in a competition. But if things are off, it's okay. You've had months off, so you can't expect things to just continue to be the same of how they were.
Right. So it
Mhm.
really does seem like having a certain perspective in
Yeah.
regards to where you were to where you are now was helpful.
Yes. Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to touch on one part that I didn't mention that I wanted to touch on, but I'm just kind of taking because it's so good, right? This is actually like athletes are coming back just like you. I think this is great stuff.
Hmm.
But you mentioned belief and trust,
Hmm.
and I mentioned this to a guest last week. I had a swimmer on, and I asked her like, how do you know when you have genuine belief? Not you know what? There is some times where you have to kind of fake it to make it, but
Yeah.
how do you know there's a genuine belief in your abilities? How do you know for yourself?
Well, that's definitely where confidence comes into play, for me, knowing that I can be effective in my triple jump and I have the confidence that I can do it well. And for me, like past performances, another mental skill that I use, looking at successful jumps, things that I've done, and knowing that I'm capable of doing this.
Right.
Um, so for me, like that definitely helps. Like I've done this before, I can do it again. This what went well for me this one time. And for me, that's where I get my belief from. Like I've done it before, so why can't I do it again?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and again, like, it just when and you're so familiar with your training and competing and now the coaching and sports psych side, like, that's what athletes they just say over and over again. Like it's just there has to be some truth to
Yeah.
confidence building because people at a high level say the same thing over and over again, just in a little bit different way. So
Hmm.
I don't know if there's young athletes on this Instagram live with us, but if there are, or even older athletes, that's how confidence is built, right? It's everyone's different, but genuine belief,
Hmm.
it really are those things, right? One is you have to have something that you can rely on,
Yeah.
right? So that's important in regard. Like, what are you going to rely on to build up your confidence? You're saying training, right? I've done this before.
Hmm.
I've done this before, maybe earlier today, last week, all those kind of pieces, right? So that genuine belief comes from a lot of experiences that you can kind of bring up along the
Yeah.
way. And I think that's so important.
Yeah. And training, obviously, like you're doing everything in training, in preparation for the competition. So when you go to the competition, ideally nothing should be different because you've done it all already.
Yeah.
Obviously it's a different environment. You may feel more pressure, but it's everything you've already done. Everything should feel somewhat normal.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And even just from today on, I was just on LinkedIn and someone posted a quote from Michael Jordan where Michael Jordan, I don't know if it's his exact words, it mentioned it in this quote or information that this person brought forward that Michael Jordan says that he practiced as hard or harder and did all the skills in practice. So when he came to a game, he just allowed himself to do it. Like and that's the thing that
Hmm.
practice is so important.
It is.
It really is,
And
right?
obviously, like athletes, like all you want to do is compete, okay, I can miss this one day of practice, like it's fine. But no, you really need that foundation to help you. Obviously there's some training days where we're doing like repeat 200s and I'm just like,
Yeah.
I can't do this
Oh,
last
not
200.
again.
I can't do it. But I know that I just have to persevere and fight through because it's going to help me in the long run with my jumps.
Yeah, and that's another one that I hope people hear from you is that even though it might not be the greatest training session
Hmm.
and you may not be in that mood or feel physically, but I'm going to do it because it's going to help me here.
Exactly.
And,
Yes.
and that's huge for commitment and perseverance, like having the belief that I'm going to get something out of this is huge.
Hmm.
It really is. Yeah.
And like just going back to these past two meets that we had for outdoor, um, I was a little bit nervous because six jumps is a lot. Like you're literally using all of your energy, to do three jumps. It's not an easy task and it's tiring. So like usually by the sixth jump, like I'm not winded or anything, but like, you start to feel your body like
Yeah.
fatigued and things like that. So I was nervous for that aspect. Like, would I even be able to get through these six jumps? Like we've been training for a month and a bit, but like,
Right.
can I
Right.
do it? But it's because I had that foundation of base training from indoor season to everything, finishing those reps, giving it my all that like I had no issue at all completing those jumps. So
Yeah. But here's the
yeah.
thing. You're so, and this is what, at least in my experience, that athletes at a high level, they're really open and honest that they doubt. I wouldn't have not thought. So when I was in your position years and years ago,
Yes.
I wouldn't have thought that, right? That everyone, they're mentally tough and they bring this forward and no one struggles. Over the last 2 decades, I find that people who are at a high level are very genuine that they are challenged mentally.
Hmm.
They just cope better than anyone else. They just cope,
Yeah.
right? But it's not like they deny themselves that, hey, my body's hurting, I'm tired. They take it all in. It's just they recover quicker. They
Yes.
accept and
Yeah.
recover,
Hmm.
right? And that's what it sounded like for your meet. that you were like doubting yourself with your body, but
Yeah,
I'm still able to cope,
exactly. Yeah. Like I can
which is
get
so
through
cool.
this. It's fine.
Yeah, but it's not being scared of doing that check-in, right?
No, and I feel like you need to because obviously you need to know how your body's feeling, everything like that, because then you don't want to risk injuries or anything either.
Yeah, here's so we have a question, but keep them coming. So here's we'll have to read this up where we stop and both read.
Right? At which point does an athlete have to draw the line between pushing through and staying committed, especially technical sports beginning?
Okay, let's go.
Wow.
We'll both
Great
go. You're the
question.
current athlete, but I'll go to you. Go. It's up to you. You want to go
Okay,
first or
I'll
second?
go first.
Go ahead.
I actually have I have a story for this actually. So
Go.
freshman year, when I was at Southern Illinois, obviously as a freshman, all you want to do is compete. You know, you got recruited, you're excited, you're a new member of the team. So for me, I was not used to training 5 days a week, 2 a days, weightlifting, all of that I was not used to. So it was something that I kind of was thrown into, and I had to adjust accordingly. But of course, I started feeling aches and pains. But I'm like, you know what? No, it's fine. Like, I'm just going to push through it. My teammates are doing it. Yeah, it hurts, but I'm just going to push through. Obviously, the pain started to get worse and worse. But it was one of those ones where you don't want to show a sign of weakness. So you're just going to continue to fight through. And then when it becomes unbearable, you're like, okay, let me maybe get this checked out, you know, see what's up, something like that. Um, and it ended up being like a horrible injury that obviously I didn't expect or anything like that. But when it comes to this question, I feel as if it's hard for someone to tell you, obviously, like, no, keep going, like, you're fine. You're going to be the best judgment for yourself. So if you know that you're legitimately in pain, you know, feeling things that you're not used to, you need to stop. Like, of course, you're going to be fatigued, maybe lazy, things like that, but you'll be able to tell the difference. So it's kind of just having that integrity and knowing for you personally when it's time to give up.
Wow. Wow. Like so well said. Like and that's something for athletes, coaches, like you have to know the difference between fatigue
Mm-hmm.
and pain. Right?
Yes.
And those things and for some sports and including your sport, those things might be very close, but it's that and this comes with experience, just and that's
Mm-hmm.
just need time for it, but understanding those differences, like really doing an introspection, right? Like am I fatigued and not motivated versus like I'm hurting physically
Yeah.
and I need
Mm-hmm.
to be able to get away from it because recovery is bigger now than before, but that's huge. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have to recover mentally and physically if you are in pain,
Yeah.
right? And that's important. And that's I like the word you meant. Like you still have to have integrity with it. You still have to look yourself in the mirror. You might want to get some support from others, like a athletic trainer or a physical trainer. Talk to a coach that you're close with and go, here's how I'm feeling. What do you think? This is what I'm thinking, and then make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, please
No
keep it coming.
problem.
This what makes this conversation and having an opportunity to get together with people. It's just like this is what it's all about, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
finer points in regards to the mental part that we focus on a little bit more, but also just these interrelated parts that it's really helpful to be able to converse about these. So thank
Yeah.
you for the question. Hey, I want to get to other transition pieces with you, but
Okay.
curious one for me, because I was not a track athlete. What are some subtle differences between triple jump and long jump? Like people would think like, like as an athlete, like these are two different events
Yeah.
that you do well. How would you prepare differently for them?
So for me, triple jump's my main. Um, I don't want to say like I prepare better for it, but obviously I feel I have more pressure with triple jump because it is my main event and I know that I'm better at it. Um, so when it comes to long jump, I don't think about long jump as much. I mean, I still do the same like mental preparedness and things like that, but it's kind of just I just jump. I don't really think per se.
Okay.
Um, but the distinct differences between the jumps, obviously with triple jump, you have three jumps, so it's a hop, a step, and a jump.
Yeah.
A lot more taxing on the body. Um, with triple jump, obviously you want to be fast. with everything that you do. But with
Mhm.
long jump is more of like a speed event, you know. That's why most sprinters are long jumpers as well. For me, like I'm not typically that fast, so that's why triple jump is fine for me. And that's why I kind of struggle with long jump as well because I just don't have that speed, you know, to take me off the board to go
Mhm.
far. Um, so yeah, those would kind of be like the distinct differences there.
But that's helpful. And even one thing that you brought up in knowing a little bit about just jumpers, you go through your sprinting stuff too, right? So you are also at times a sprinter, right?
Yeah,
For certain, so it's not like this might be your main event, but
it's
you
not
have
all I do.
not all you do, right? And it kind of reminds me of other sports, right? Swimmers are just not only sprinters; they might do a longer event because
Yeah,
one helps them with the other kind of event.
exactly. Yeah.
That's good. That's a curious question on my part. I
hmm
was wanting to know.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, I want you to bring us back a few years, and I've been kind of just based on where we are with the time. So fall for me, I remember my fall sports. I remember university's fall sports, becoming a student athlete again.
hmm
And it's not an easy thing being a student athlete at a high level, be it high school,
No.
university, or after university and working. It's challenging. Like,
hmm
can you go back to your university days and maybe even first year, your
Yeah.
freshman year, because you moved away from home,
Yes.
moved to an entirely new place.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges of being a first year student athlete?
Whew, a lot of challenges.
A lot of people do that, right? I love it. I love it. Like going back, you're like, whew.
Yeah, like wow. Yeah, 5 years ago. But yeah, no, so new environment, you know, at the time I only knew my teammates and that was just for my visit. So getting to know new people and introducing myself. Um, practice, I'll say it continuously for me was the hardest transition. Um, just because, yeah, it was nothing that I was used to. I mean, I was involved in a lot of extracurriculars in high school. So for me, track, you know, if I was lucky, I would go to practice twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was that. So now that track was my main focus, it was weird for me because I was so used to doing like other sports and other things where like, this is what I'm here to do. So now I have to focus on that. Study tables, you know, so now you're being monitored with your homework, things that you're doing. You basically just have high expectations. You know, you have to have a certain GPA. Um, you, everything that you do, you're just being monitored. Like you're just being
Okay.
watched, and it could be a little bit scary because you want to make sure that you're doing everything that you need to do, because you're representing the school and the program, and you want to,
Sure.
you know, represent it well. Um,
Can I ask what were some of the, so again, challenges, right? There's
yeah.
more of everything, right? There's more athletics, there's more school, right? It's
hmm
just more courses, more stuff that you need to do for those courses in university. What were some of the mental skills that you used to help yourself during that first year?
So at the time, I had no clue of what sports psychology was, you know, anything to help me mentally. And I was actually in a freshman athlete class, which was run by the sports psychologist that we had at the school. So she introduced to us, you know, basic things like imagery, journaling, things like that. And, you know, like you're just in class listening, like, okay, this is cool, but like probably not going to use it. Like, thanks, you know. And it wasn't until I started getting injured where it's like, okay, like maybe I need to start using this. So, like, at the time, I was using healing imagery. Um, so if you don't know what that is, it's basically the same thing as imagery, you know, using the senses and stuff. But as you're getting treatment, you're kind of just imagining yourself healing and getting better and stronger.
Mm.
So that was something that definitely helped me. Um, but journaling too, it kind of just got like as the season progressed, you know, as you're competing every weekend and things like that, you're getting better, you're getting more competition, you're seeing people you haven't seen before. So just using that mental stuff to help you get through those meets.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing that you mentioned that anytime I can kind of pick up on it and highlight it, the best athletes keep track of things.
hmm
Plain and simple.
Yeah.
And I won't kind of give away from people I've worked with, but I just know the greatest athletes, the ones at the highest level, they keep track. Like they have books of
hmm
how they. It's almost like a little bit obsessive, but it's kind of not. Like it's just who they like. They just keep track. But then when you talk about confidence, you can always refer back to it. It's
Yeah.
it's a confidence builder, because if you're still flipping pages through a journal or it's on your phone, right? You can still go back to it and go, yep, okay,
Hmm.
I can improve here. This is good. Like it just seems like that tracking is so important
It is, yeah.
as competition levels increase.
Because sometimes you feel as if you're not seeing the growth that you've had. So like just looking back, like, oh, this is where I started, this is where I am now. And especially with track, it's hard because the only way you can truly see like your progress is getting a personal best or something, when that's not always necessarily the case. Like maybe you
Yes,
didn't get a personal best this meet, but your approaches were all spot on for all 6 jumps. Like it's
yes,
just like having small victories as well that you need to recognize and understand.
yeah, yeah. Hey, so what awesome advice. But here's where we're gonna fast forward 4 or 5 years, and then you're done. You graduate, you finish your
Yeah.
athletic career, but then because then you move back home, right?
Yes.
So
Hmm.
just kind of help people with your path. But you are still competing, but you don't have that kind of strict university environment, right? Like
Yeah.
class at this time, practice here. Like, how have you adjusted to performing now? Not to say you're not on your own, but you're not under the kind of guidance of a university program.
Hmm.
What's helped you on your own now?
Just finding that motivation, honestly. I mean, when I came back from school, honestly, I had I did not want to do track. I'm not going to lie to you. Um, I was doing it, every day, never with track, like you barely get a break, because you're kind of always in season from base training from fall to about December. Then you go into indoor season from January to about March, then outdoor April to August, usually. September, well, depending where you are. So like school started in August. So like I would probably have 3 weeks off max and
Right.
then back to training again. So for
Yeah.
me, like I just wanted a break, just to see like if I truly would miss it, kind of like
Yeah.
figure out who I am without track. So I took the summer off and I realized I missed it.
Yeah. It,
um,
it's so interesting. Like that is just even perspective wise. And I've just heard it again, the Thursday Instagram lives and having really awesome athletes on. Perspective outside of their sport also helps them,
mhm.
right? It's just like they get to learn about themselves a little bit outside of the track that they bring into themselves as track. Almost kind of a little bit of that balance, even though they're really driven in their sport.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's nice to get outside and then come back in at times.
Yeah, I definitely feel as if I needed it, so I wouldn't get burnt out, So I just need to have like that different perspective and actually want to do it, be willing to participate in track. And I think because I know that I'm doing it for myself, like that's why I'm motivated and I just want to get better. And now that I'm coaching, like I'm a mentor to my athletes, and that has actually been such a great feeling for me, like, having them come to me about certain conversations, knowing everything that I've gone through at school and my personal experiences is helping them transition with what they're doing and their jumps. Um, so yeah, just
Yeah, no,
motivation,
for sure.
obviously it's hard with work and everything. There's some days, promise you, I just don't want to go to practice. I'm just not feeling it. But those
Yeah,
are the days where like you need to go and you need to push yourself.
right. Just to kind of put that work in, just
Exactly. Yeah.
for that longer term goal.
Hmm.
Hey, we have another question here. This is all you. What are your strengths as an athlete?
Strength as an athlete. Okay. Um, I never give up regardless of the circumstance. Um, there's some meets where, you just jump horrible or things like that, but I never let that define me or affect how I am. Um, one thing about me too, like I'm always happy for like my teammates' successes and everything like that. So regardless if I was, let's just say, you have like the heat sheets that typically shows you like how everyone should place, but anything can happen. So it's not necessarily how it goes. But
Mhm.
let's just say I had a higher seed than somebody else and they come out and beat me. Some people can just sulk about it. Oh, wow, they beat me when I was supposed to beat them, things like that. So a strength for me, I think, is acknowledging like the successes of others. Like you did great. Like you were on it today, letting them know and letting them be aware of the great performance that they had, and using that as motivation for myself too. Like, okay, how can I use this experience to help me next time, or what did I feel, or how did this make me feel? Like just getting in tune with my emotions. um What other strengths? Oh, driven,
Yeah.
It takes a lot mentally, obviously, and physically to do what I do. I'm probably going to need a double knee placement, to be honest, when I'm 40, with triple jump. But I enjoy it. So just the drive, going to practice, having fun with it, seeing my athletes, other coaches. Um, it really is just like a nice family environment, and especially like with the track world here, like everyone kind of knows each other as well. And I think that makes it better,
Yeah.
with everything.
And you're now in regards to, so we kind of talked about going from university now to competing and being outside
Yes.
of university. In regards to your university career, so
Whew.
master's in sports psych, right?
Yes.
So
Uh-huh.
doing some work in sports psych, also coaching. So
Hmm.
you're in as a competitor, but now you're kind of on the other side of things as a coach in sports psych, and you mentioned mentorship as well.
Yeah.
What what
Um,
what do you appreciate? What are you appreciating from the mentorship, coaching, sports psych role outside of coaching? Oh, outside of competing.
about
Sorry.
competing.
Yeah.
Um, it's been different, but obviously I'm really enjoying it. I think for me, it's just knowing, like seeing the improvements, and like hearing the compliments and things like that. I mean, at the meet 2 weeks ago, I was one of the older athletes competing, so that's also been a transition for me.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm so used to competing with people like my age. So
Yeah.
I'm an open athlete now, but there isn't always open meets. So I'm typically jumping with like 18-year-olds and things like that. So this past meet, I was jumping with 14-year-olds,
Wow.
and one of them
That's
came up.
different.
It's
Yeah.
different because I'm not used to it. So I had to adjust to that environment and, things like that. Um, so she came up to me and just asked me like if I was so and so, like if this is my mark, and I was like, yeah, that's me, but like just trying to reassure her, like, don't worry about what I'm jumping, like,
Yeah.
focus on you. And she was like, I can't imagine being 24. You're so old. And
Oh,
I was just, like, I've never, had that experience before at a track meet.
right,
So I'm
right,
just like, oh, okay. I need to realize, yeah, I'm not with people that I'm typically comfortable with or that are my age. Um,
right.
but then afterwards, she's like, you're like my role model. And to me,
But you're
like, that
just
was,
embracing it. Like I see the smile on your face, like just and there's
yeah,
like the comical part, but it seems like you're surely embracing it. Even before that, the comment made by the younger athlete, you're
yeah.
like, yeah, this is kind of where I'm at within my
Hmm.
career.
Yeah. So it's always fun and entertaining to see what they have to say and stuff. But I just love that they can like see me and kind of use me, because I didn't necessarily have that when I was growing up, like competing and things like that. So I wish I had someone I could look up to and be like, wow, this is like kind of what I want to be when I'm older, or things like that, and use that as motivation to continue in sport. And
Yeah,
especially as a female, like that's important.
yeah, so important. And even as you say that role model piece is just taking those little bits and pieces, right?
Hmm.
Just like you were and I was at one time. Like you look up to people, but you just want to take those parts that you can make your own, right? And
Yeah.
become your own athlete, but not to have those role models.
Hmm.
That's challenging to become who you are without some guidance from
Yeah.
others. Hey, so we started off, and this is a headset Instagram live, so it's through headset. So you are familiar with headset,
Yes, I
right?
am.
And used it along the way.
Hmm.
Can you for people who haven't used it, can you tell them how it might have been helpful to you along the way?
Okay. Yeah, so I was using headset for my indoor season. Usually for me, I'm used to like, in person with my sports psychologist and stuff like that. So headset was all online, and it just gave me a different perspective of things. I'm not necessarily, so there's these worksheets that are done weekly, um, covering different skills to, help you improve and see how they apply to your sport and stuff. And I wasn't necessarily like used to the worksheets. So I really enjoyed that because they're very in depth, and they had examples of things that you can use. There's always like videos that you can look at as well of how maybe like this certain skill or activity helps an athlete, which is always nice because you want to see like, people be successful with what you're doing and learning. But one thing that I really liked was the competition aspect. So like before you compete, it'll have like a competition checklist, like, okay, before you compete, make sure you, or like ensure to do this, or maybe these skills will help you. just little reminders of things that you may forget. And even though like I have, you know, a background in sports psychology and things like that, there were things that I didn't even think about or, you know, just forgot because after a while you just learn different things or,
Sure.
you know, what work out for you. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I could use this or I could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so happy to hear that, because that's what it is, right? It's
Hmm.
just giving you here's some opportunity that is tailored to you, that think about it, right? And
Yeah.
maybe you don't apply all of it, but it's those little pieces that you might be able to make your own, that it becomes a part of your routine,
Hmm.
right? And some
Exactly.
stuff sticks and some stuff doesn't, but it still is a guided path along the way.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it was really useful.
I have one more question for you, but I'm going to hold
Okay.
off because I'm going to bring it back out to people. So if there are any more questions, we're going to start to kind of wrap this up. So put them back out in that chat function of Instagram if you have them. So my final question is, so you've been doing this for a while, competing. Now it's the kind of mental skills part and mentorship. Like how much time would you spend on mental skills training?
For me personally?
Yeah, like how, like give people, like people always ask me like how, I get this a lot, like
Uh-huh.
how often and how long should I do it for? I get that question all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask you that question.
Um, there is no right or wrong answer when it comes to that because at the end of the day, it's basically just based on the person and what they're comfortable with and what helps them. For me, daily,
Yeah.
yeah, I use it daily. I mean, if I'm practicing, I'll probably use it a lot more. Um, but yeah, it varies, you know, it depends on what I'm going through as well, what I'm feeling, if I'm hurt, if I'm injured. Typically, if I'm hurt, I would use it more just to like calm myself down and, you know, to get rid of the negative thoughts associated with injury and things like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, well said. And I'm just gonna, so for people who are listening, who are just kind of trying to figure this out in regards to mental skills, it depends on you.
Hmm.
Awesome. Generally, people who are very high level, they do it almost every day,
Yeah.
right? So that's just, but it depends on kind of where you're at. Um, are we talking minutes? Are we talking hours per day? How often would, like within a day? Give me a rough estimate.
Within a day, no more than 30 minutes for me.
Minutes.
Yeah,
Minutes.
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does not have to be hours. I don't
No.
know what you're doing for an hour or so.
Minutes.
Yeah.
Minutes, but they're deliberate, right? So
Yeah.
that's where it's deliberate minutes almost every day. It really depends on how you're doing. And again, a lot of people do talk about, and it's those times that you're away, like injuries, but also off season might
Hmm.
be when you do it a little bit more and getting you ready for when you come back.
Yeah.
All right, so we have one final question, and thank you for all these questions so far. So, big practice, big warm up performers who can't duplicate their personal best level performances. Strategies to help manage that adrenaline.
My bad.
Can I take on one part of this and then let you take it on?
Yes, go for it.
I want to highlight that if you're going into meets with a PB in mind, it's a
It's
challenge.
yeah, and it probably won't happen.
It's not gonna.
No.
It's so. If I could use this and just as a kind of guide for athletes to duplicate a certain level of performance, yes. But remember, it's called a personal best. So those
Hmm.
happen infrequently. So maybe it's that. How do you? What's the difference between like a goal that you had and not being able to get to it? So that personal best level, I kind of just
Hmm.
kind of reframe for people as you're listening. But what strategies do you use to manage the adrenaline for you as an athlete?
For me, that's where that self-talk, you know, comes back into play. Um, like obviously, like you have the adrenaline, you know everything that's going on, but that self-talk for me, it just allows me to, you know, take a breath, take a breather, allow me to actually feel what I'm feeling and like notice like, okay, you're feeling it a little too much, like let's calm it down. Um, you know, deep breaths, things like that.
Yeah.
If it's
Well said. As you're reading that next part,
yeah.
learn how to breathe. Yeah, and I never thought in sport you would kind of that is a big part of learn how to breathe, especially when you are nervous.
Yes.
So bring that adrenaline down. You have to work
You have
on
to breathe. Take
your
deep breaths.
breathing.
Yeah.
Huge. And we got one more, specifically if they're in a warm up. Well, and maybe you can kind of help out with what you do, like right before you jump. You mentioned this earlier, but one of the questions is, like, what do you do right before you jump, those last minute or two?
No, I think he's asking like, so basically if they have like a really good jump in their warm up, but then it's not there, like when they're actually competing.
Okay.
Okay, so if it's in warm up and then not there when the meet starts 2 minutes later. Okay, and then how do you manage that, I guess?
Yeah, and maybe I'm not reading it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that actually is very tough. It's happened to me a few times, but it's kind of just understanding that you know it's there, you're capable of it. Maybe it's just not the right time. So you kind of just have to shift your perspective on it. Obviously, it's frustrating because you're like, I literally just did this in warm up. How come I can't replicate it? But usually in warm up, obviously the competition hasn't started yet, so you're a little bit more relaxed. Like, obviously you're preparing for competition, but you know that you're not really competing yet. So you're probably just more relaxed and don't even realize it. And then when the competition starts, it's something they just have shut off. So now you're just in competition mode, switching mentally and not even realizing it, which obviously can affect how you perform. You're not as loose. You're thinking about different things, which are all like limiting you and what you're capable of.
Oh, well said. Well said. Hey, we're talking through your Instagram, right? But you have your own, for the work that you do in sports psych and coaching, you have a different
I'm
Instagram.
just starting it up, yes.
But you gotta throw it out there. You gotta throw it out there.
So it's called,
put it on ours too.
Okay, it's called The Mind Game. So the.mind.game. Basically just a platform, yes, I'm going to start using for my sports psychology and coaching and just being a resource for student athletes, coaches, you know, with my experiences, obviously my sports psychology degree, anything that I can do just to be beneficial to help, you know, athletes in the sport world.
Yeah, and this is one right here. So we're happy that we've been able to talk together. We're going to post it on our Instagram. I'll send you a link as well for yours.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I think people just got to just listen, right? Little nuggets, right? Just listen to it, take it away, and then who knows how an athlete kind of uses this for their success. So I really appreciate it. It was awesome chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. This was great.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. All right, everyone. We're going to call it a day.
Thanks for tuning in.
See you later. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.